Trial of Arne Cheyenne Johnson, also known as the Devil Made Me Do It case, is the first known case in the United States in which the defense sought to prove innocence based upon the claim of demonic possession. November the 24th, 1981, in Brookfield, Connecticut, Arne Cheyenne Johnson was convicted of first-degree manslaughter for the killing of his landlord, Alan Bono. According to testimony by the Glatzel family, 11-year-old David Glatzel allegedly had played host to a demon. After witnessing a number of increasingly ominous occurrences involving David, his family was exhausted and terrified and decided to enlist the help of Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Glatzel family, along with the Warrens, then proceeded to have multiple priests perform exorcisms on a 7-day period with David and his family present.
Beside the still waters, he restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for my name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod, thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house.
Debbie Glatzel, pictured on the right, and David Glatzel, pictured on the left, began experiencing some strange phenomena after the exorcisms. And several months later, David Glatzel killed his landlord during a party. His defense lawyer argued in court that he was possessed, but the judge ruled that such a defense could not be proven. He was convicted and only served 5 years of a 10 to 20-year sentence. The trial attracted media attention from around the world, and Ed and Lorraine Warren were also
these
present.
Men. And they were very frightened of the things that Arnie would say. He was such a compassionate young man, such a low-key person. Never once did I see him show any type of violent behavior. He was a perfect gentleman, Mr. and Mrs. Warren, everything, just a beautiful person, tremendous respect for the priest.
If you were going to have a son, he'd be the boy you'd want.
Yeah, that's the kind of a boy he was, Tony.
Mm-hmm. But he made that fatal mistake.
And
Challenging the devils.
And I know that one of the Catholic priests even met with him to talk with him because he was so concerned about his welfare. Mm-hmm. And because, like you say, he challenged it, Tony. And remember that when you challenge the demonic, it doesn't act at that particular given time, Tony. Mm-hmm. It waits until you are the most vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And then it strikes.
When you least suspect it.
When you least suspect it.
Now, what happened was actually, Arnie had gone to a pizza parlor with Debbie, his fiancée, and his sisters. They met Alan Bono there, a friend of theirs. They went back to the Bono's house, and Arnie disappeared for a few minutes. When he came back, he was somebody entirely different.
What? Now, when
he doesn't recognize or know anything about what happened from that point on.
Well, now, Tony, we're going to backtrack from time to time.
What I'd like to do, if I could interrupt for one moment. I know, Ed, that you and Lorraine both have brought slides tonight. You think perhaps we should look at the first few slides just to get an idea of what this was all about?
Yes, that's a good idea.
So if we could, I'd like to bring up that first slide, and we'll let you talk about it.
The first slide, of course, is of St. Joseph's Church.
Okay.
in Brookfield, Connecticut.
All right.
This is where the first exorcism took place.
Okay.
And it's an exorcism that I'll never forget. The first one actually was in the convent, and that was not successful. It was that morning when David came under possession and would not get into the car. He ran away from his family. He had a knife. He actually tried to kill his mother and his grandmother. And this is not David. David was a very complacent child, very docile. And when I walked in, he was laying on the bed in a fetus position. This priest was standing alongside of him. And I said to the priest, "Don't stand so close," because he had a bad habit of taking his fist and just hitting you. The priest backed up, and suddenly that boy rose up out of the bed very swiftly, landed on the floor, ran into a bathroom, and locked the door. He would not come out. Hysterical laughter came from the bathroom. Finally, we broke the door. We got him out of there. We brought him to the convent at St. Joseph's, where the exorcism was performed on September 9th, the birthday of the Blessed Mother.
Yeah, September 8th.
And we felt that this would be successful. And he told us that what they called the beast, which was seen many times in the house and out in the grounds, was back at the house. I went back there, and I had taken holy water with me while the priest stayed in the convent. I then went through the house, and I used what we call religious provocation. I sprinkled the holy water, and there was a rocking chair there. This rocking chair suddenly started to move back violently, back and forth. There were loud pounding sounds in the house. And then what I could hear is growling down in the cellar. Now, these were some of the sounds that we heard the very first night that we went there with Dr. Giangrasso. But it sounded like somebody had a 2x4 and was hitting the floor underneath us, but nobody was there.
Yeah, the floor.
Now, what's this second slide that we're going to see here, Ed?
All right, these are some of the headlines. Terrifying story behind the devil-made youth kill case. That's Debbie Glotzel that you see there, who was a fiancée
Right.
of Arnie, and that's Arnie Weir in the corner up there.
Okay.
And we can see the next one.
Can we
But-
take that? Okay, they're showing you
Yeah,
as the
they're showing-
investigators in
As
the
the
case.
investigators.
Now, what year did you say this was?
1980 that we became involved in the case, Tony. But, you know, one thing that we have to stress that's very important is that we knew it was inevitable that there was going to be a tragedy. We knew it. We even notified the police.
Because of the violence. And Lorraine did notify the police, Chief.
What did they have to say about it?
Well, there was nothing we could do in advance.
In other words, before the fact, there's
Before
nothing.
the fact, there was nothing they could do except watch and go to the calls whenever they would happen at the home. But all the priests knew it. It wasn't just myself. It was all of the priests who were well aware that it was inevitable there would be a tragedy. But never, ever did we think it would be Arnie Johnson.
Now, keep in mind that we had psychiatrists look at this boy. They told us, point blank, the boy was not mentally ill.
Oh, no.
The outward manifestations that we look for in case of possession occurred in that house. Furniture moving around, pounding sounds, the hystericalness of the boy, the strength of the boy, speaking in other languages. It was just a stereotype possession case. We could look at some more of those
Okay.
slides. We'll show the mother and father.
Here's another article, I guess, on the
This is another
possession.
one.
Yes, that's
Arnie
Arnie Johnson.
there.
See, in the left-hand corner there.
Yes.
What's
Now,
the next
if,
slide?
You know, if the judge had let us bring in our evidence, which were
Yeah.
recordings, photographs, eyewitness accounts, and the priests. The priests were waiting outside of the courthouse in Danbury, Connecticut, to go into that courthouse
Testify?
and testify that what occurred to this young boy and Arnie Johnson was indeed diabolical possession. But I could understand the judge's feelings too. He didn't want to be known as the judge who allowed the devil made me do it case into his courtroom.
Right. Okay, I guess this is an article that talks about you
Devil
and...
made him do it. And the devil did make him do it.
Oh, yeah, we were all...
Arnie Johnson was under diabolical possession. He didn't know what happened for at least 2 hours. In that 2 hours, he had killed Alan Bono. This young man wouldn't hurt anyone or anything. You'd have to know Arnie Johnson like we knew him. Very polite, a very good living young man, very hardworking. He'd work until 5 o'clock, landscaping, cutting trees, have his supper, go to bed until 11. Then he'd get up and he'd stay up all night long, holding this young boy down.
He would have David sleep next to him so that the family, the parents, Judy and Carl Glatzel, this took a terrible toll on this family. You cannot believe the emotional and physical toll.
I always said that if a court would allow us to bring our evidence into this guy, that there is the lawyer, Martin Manella,
Yeah.
and he put his position in jeopardy as a lawyer by going in on this case, but he knew that the boy was possessed. He felt we could win the case, never knowing that the judge would not allow us to bring in our evidence. But Lorraine and I set a precedent in 1990 in which we did win a case where a woman was driven out of a house in Hebron, Connecticut that was haunted by ghosts. We would have won this case too, and Arnie Johnson would have not gone to prison.
Now, is this one of the priests that was in the house?
That's the exorcist.
He was the exorcist.
Yes, he was, and he was very, very badly affected by this case.
Yeah, in what way?
Well, Tony, it was an all-night session at that house one night. All night we were up with the exorcisms and the praying. And it was that night, Tony, that I taught that little boy the guardian angel prayer, that angel of God, my guardian
Yes.
dear. I taught him how to say that prayer. And that seemed to give this child a certain amount of comfort. And we were really exhausted, tired.
But remember, the exorcist is attacked, not just while he's performing exorcism, but in his own rectory.
That's what I was just going to tell you. Now, we left there early morning. Father Virgilac wanted to get back to Norwalk because he was going to say Mass that morning, and his parents were going to be at Mass. He did not want them to know. He didn't want them to be concerned for him. And he had shared things with his sister, but he had not shared things with his dad, who, by the way, was chief of police.
Oh, really?
And so that morning...
Chief of police in Norwalk.
Yes.
In Norwalk.
Yes. Oh, no, not in Brookfield.
Okay. Now, do we have a picture of the Glatzels?
Yeah.
I think, yes, there they are. There's
Okay.
Judy and Carl Glatzel.
That's the mother and father of David,
That is after the boy was exorcised.
both extremely good people and
Jovial
very patient.
people. Jovial.
Mr. Glatzel there, as big he is, looks like Grizzly Adams, could not hold that boy down alone.
Oh, no, he couldn't hold him
There'd
at
be
all.
sometimes, as I said, 4 and 5 men that would have to hold this boy down.
Okay, let's get into that just a little bit if we could. Now, here's a picture.
All right,
here's a
there-
picture of him.
Yes.
What's he
Coming
is he-
out of possession,
Okay, he's being,
crying, and
That's-
he's holding on to his mother.
That
Now-
is what he would do, Tony, all the time.
would you say, in your professional opinion, that he was possessed by a devil or a demon, or what would it be exactly?
He was possessed by devils.
Yeah,
By devil.
I
In
would
In fact,
say,
when they were spending the night at the Glatzel home, I went into my study and I called on the devil. I thought it was one devil, which they called the beast, to come to where I was at so I could bind the spirit of that devil so it wouldn't go back into the
Okay,
house.
what's that bind? What's that mean?
Binding of the spirit. The priests were casting out the devils of the house. I felt that the beast would then come to where I was, and I would bind the spirit through that ritual. But Tony, that was one of the most frightening evenings of my life. There was not one devil, there were 43 of them,
43
which
devils.
came to me as a kaleidoscope, as if you were watching one horrible face after another. And remember, I was in that study by myself.
I was saying, what did
Now-
you do? What happened? What did you do? If it was me, I think I'd have ran out. What did you
Well, I have to be honest with you. I was just stunned. I couldn't move. I was watching it happen very quickly. And as I watched it, it was like a kaleidoscope of horrible faces coming to me. I knew that I had no power up against this. I felt it was one devil, and which they called the beast. But when I seen over 40 of them, I knew that we were dealing with the hierarchy of the diabolical world. At that point, I gave it up, and I went out of the study.
Oh, so you did
I
leave.
left, yes, because I knew that I did not have any control over what was happening here.
Now, I was with the priest at the house during this. So in the morning, I came home with them when they were coming home. And I felt that Father Virgilak particularly needed some rest before he, and I wanted him to take a nap before he went home because he looked exhausted. Tony, if you ever seen these priests, you know how meticulous they are about their appearance.
Right.
Leaving this house in the morning, they looked like they were coming out of battle, which of course they were. But he related to me that day, coming home, how when he woke up this morning, that his pillow was soaked with blood.
Now, the blood that she's speaking of is called an apport through teleportation. This is meant to frighten the priests. It's meant to frighten us so that we would stop our investigation. But we understand and know the powers of devils. And fortunately for us, we have some type of protection, which I think comes from when I was a boy yet, the Blessed Mother, Padre Pio, whom we pray to all the time. And without this protection, this angelic protection, we wouldn't be sitting here talking right now.
This next slide, Ed, what is this of?
This is the convent
Now,
where in Brookfield of St. Joseph's, where the first exorcism was performed, which was unsuccessful. It was at this time that I left the convent because nothing was happening and went back to the Brookfield
house.
farmhouse. And this is where the rocking chair was going back and forth, and I heard the growling sounds and the pounding sounds.
now, Tony, I don't want you to think that that blood on the pillow was the priest, because it was not. That was not his own blood. He was not bleeding. That was an apport, something that had dematerialized at one point and reappeared at another point. That's was, in this case,
I
really
think
meant to terrify
one of the
him.
frightening things that occurred to Arnie and Debbie, they would sleep on the floor
Oh, yes.
next to David. If he woke up, then they'd be there to control him. And what they seen and described was a bone-like hand that came up through the floor, green, and an arm. Now, again, these types of things are meant to frighten. Because when a
do.
person becomes frightened, they will throw off psychic energy into the atmosphere, which a negative force will use as a fuel to manifest itself more.
Okay, now where exactly did the exorcism take place? Oh, there's a slide right here. Is that the church?
That's it. Yes, it is, Tony. That's the church. And the doorway that off to the right. The basement. See, they now have a new, very beautiful church.
The church in...
That's the church in Brookfield.
That was the first church. There's another one there now.
There's another beautiful
Okay.
church, and it was down in that basement, which was adjacent to the school. Now, Tony, after the exorcism had been performed there, they knew they couldn't do it anymore. There was so much noise and so much violence during that exorcism that it was even heard in the elementary Catholic school.
Well, the doors in back of the church would open and close. The pews were actually moving, which are bolted down. Hymn books that were in the seats next to us flew off the seats. The boy broke away from two of us and attacked the priest.
And attacked the priest. So
Now what is this next slide
I
of
wanted to
it?
show this. Oh, this is Debbie.
Debbie
with
and
Lorraine.
I, yes, that's
And
Debbie.
we're at the shrine in Brookfield right there. That's
Okay.
David's sister.
Right.
We would go
I
there
brought
a
a model
lot.
with me of a dinosaur here.
You did.
And this model, dinosaur, had just been completed by David, the young boy who was possessed. And if we could close in on that, as he finished with this, suddenly it started to walk on its own, of its own volition toward the family.
That plastic
And
dinosaur
this
started to walk.
plastic dinosaur,
and
and a deep, gruff voice came out of it and it said, "Beware, you're all going to die." And you know, one time we were at the church there, we were showing a group of people where the exorcism took place, and a man was taking recordings. And on his recording, he got the same deep, gruff voice which said, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
Oh,
he
boy.
was, we were explaining, we were talking to a group, Tony, and this man was recording what we were saying about the Brookfield case when when
Okay,
that had
so
occurred.
this case,
Now that animated, Tony.
that
It
walked.
actually
it
walked.
That
Actually,
walked.
family.
It doesn't. The thing isn't movable like
You know,
that.
I seem to remember you speaking of a similar incident in the Amityville case. Is that true? Am I
That
thinking
was
of the correct?
the lion, the ceramic lion.
Yes, the
Now,
ceramic.
why would that
color
happen?
port.
Is that just to scare everybody? Why would?
It's to frighten people. It's to frighten them, as I said earlier, because as you become frightened, you throw off this psychic energy. Devils, demons, evil spirits can use this as a fuel to manifest more phenomena. They need some kind of energy, and that's the energy.
And you know, David, the voices that he would hear when he was under possession, Tony, they would tell him things. For instance, they told him that Arnie Johnson was going to fall out of a tree. And Arnie did fall, but thank God, you know, he wasn't badly hurt.
And the beast, as they called him, also told the boy that at the end of the trial, the last day, the lights would dim down in the courtroom, and they did.
And
They did dim. So what was the outcome of that trial?
Well, the outcome was that Arnie we couldn't use the defense of the devil made him do it, so I think it was manslaughter.
Yes,
And,
because he served very
Arnie
little
got,
time.
4 years, but I think he only did 2 years of that.
And
You couldn't keep a young man like this in prison for something he didn't do.
No, and his behavior was excellent. But Tony, him and Debbie were married in prison.
oh, they were.
They were.
They have a business together. They live
Today.
in Milford today.
They have
They're happy.
They have
They're-
2 sons.
They're normal. Everything's normal now.
Oh yes.
very normal.
Oh, they're
Now,
very
how about
normal.
David? Is David doing okay?
David works with his dad.
Very normal, and
Yeah,
he's
he's
a
fine.
young man today. I guess soon to be married or whatever he's going to be doing.
Yeah.
If we could digress for just a minute. Now, I know when we first started talking.
David was asked by the judge why did he do it. His reply was, "The devil made me do it," and that inspired the movie The Conjuring 3. He stabbed his landlord repeatedly in the chest, and he died several hours later. David Glatzel has gone off the radar, and his brother Carl Glatzel often speaks to press. In 2007, David and Carl Glatzel filed a lawsuit against Ed and Lorraine Warren for financial damages. Lorraine Warren defended her work with the family, claiming that the 6 priests who were involved in the incident agreed at the time that the boy was possessed, and that supernatural events really did occur.